Well, as was said, I am Greek, which today is a full-time job, and some may not even consider it a reputable one these days. But I'm here to present the new Pact for Europe, which is the product of collective work of about 11 think tanks in Europe. We engaged for about 2 years a reflection group from these think tanks, people representing a very wide number of EU countries. And we tried to start by addressing the questions: what are the major challenges for the European Union? What are the challenges that will allow us to draw certain paths that would orient the trajectory of Europe towards addressing these challenges? And we formulated the questions. We tried to see which were the challenges that we considered to be the most important ones. And then we came up with a draft of strategic responses to these challenges, or strategic options, if I may say so, which you will see in a little while. And this draft of proposals we presented to the national public opinions in about nearly 25 countries in the European Union, over 20, if I remember well. We did that in small groups of policymakers or stakeholders. We did that to the broader public in public events. And we also did that to citizen advocacy groups, or rather citizen action groups, where we randomly selected citizens representative of various demographic categories, and we brought them together to reflect on these strategic options. And then we went back to the drawing table and tried to address our initial questions and strategic options by taking into account the feedback that we had received from this very wide number of events in a very large number of European citizens. And this is the final product of this collaborative work, which, as I said, has taken about 2 years. And the story starts from the strategic challenges of Europe. And we started writing this project at a time when Europe is experiencing what is probably the worst crisis in one of its most important constitutional projects, which is the Eurozone. And clearly, the Eurozone crisis has affected our own thinking on that issue, because the Eurozone crisis has produced a number of divisions or lines of divisions within countries and between countries. But of course, it goes beyond the Eurozone crisis. It has to do with the broader challenges that the European Union is addressing, coming both from within and from outside its borders. These economic, social, and political divisions, as they are expressed, and they are expressed in growing disparities between the countries, in growing divergence between the economies, but also in the growing distance between various socioeconomic groups within the countries. These divisions are leading to an increased fragmentation. And fragmentation is the dynamic that goes against the project of integration. It goes against the project of unity through diversity by bringing this diversity to its extremes and somehow undermining the common frame of mind that the European Union should help foster. So this is the first challenge that we have addressed, is this increasing fragmentation. The fact that certain economies and countries and societies feel that they are breaking apart from the common European project. You can see that perhaps more clearly from the periphery, from my country, from Greece, where 26% of the population are unemployed and over 50% of the youth are without a job. You can also see it from Spain. You can see it from economies that have been stagnating over the last few years. And this is leading to increasing fragmentation also in political terms, with the rise of anti-forces across Europe, and we've seen them in the last European elections. So fragmentation is the most important challenge to be addressed, together with what we have defined, and this is associated with the challenge of fragmentation, the inability of the European integration project to convince that it is able to operate as a win-win for all the member states and for all the major socioeconomic groups involved. Now, this is very important because the European integration project has been a project which has been about a voluntary transfer of sovereignty or pooling of sovereignties at a European level, which, given the fact that it is voluntary, it presupposes that all member states agree that they have something to gain from it. And we've seen this win-win project operate quite spectacularly, miraculously in various occasions and various moments of European integration. And the way, for example, in which the single market project was combined with structural and cohesion policies to produce something where there was something for all to win, to gain. And today, in the current conjuncture, we might be faced with a very important challenge, which is that for many, and in many parts of Europe, this win-win project or this win-win character is broken. And we have to fix it. We have to make all sides of the European bargain understand that there is something for all to gain from the project of European integration. And of course, fragmentation and the lack of a win-win perception of the European integration complicates the search for compromises. It makes it difficult for the European Union to provide sufficient policy solutions. And of course, it renders the European Union vulnerable to various populist and anti-forces, such as the ones that we have been witnessing over the last few years. Now, the challenge and the options, the challenge for the European Union is to find a way to restore its unity, to heal the wounds of the crisis, to develop effective responses to challenges, to articulate a new vision, to restore confidence in the ability of the European Union to defend the European way of life in any way that European citizens perceive and identify the European way of life. And we might be able to talk about that in the next sessions. And of course, to believe that the European Union is the solution and it is not part of the problem. The European Union is taking the blame for many policies that are very unwelcome by national populations, whereas it should be viewed as the solution to problems of collective coexistence. So restoring confidence to all that, the question is, what are the options? Okay, and the first option, and I'm now listing the main strategic options that are on the table. The first option has been obviously going back to basics. This option says the European Union has gone too far. We should go back, reverse gear, abandon, of course, any moves towards an ever closer union, go back to nationalizing competences and keeping the European Union at its minimal. And at its minimal being clearly not a European Union, but probably a little less than a single market, probably a little more than a European free trade area. Clearly, this is a view that has many proponents. In certain countries, in the UK, it's very topical, and so forth. We believe that this is not an option that will allow the European Union to address the challenges it is facing. We believe that a massive scaling back of European integration would weaken the country's ability to deliver effective policy responses, because we live in an age of very close interdependence, whether we want it or not, through the mechanisms of global economic integration. And the European Union has been about a collective response to this interdependence that allows the countries to pool sovereignty and become stronger in managing this interdependence. And if we go back to nationalizing powers, we will not be able to manage these challenges from a national standpoint, we will end up weaker altogether in the end. So clearly, this is not an answer for us. The opposite strategic option from that is leaping forward, is making the big step to real integration. The federal solution, or the F word, putting the European Union to the highest possible gear, turning it to a fully fledged economic, fiscal, social, and political union. Now, in as much as this is an idea that reverberates very closely in our hearts, many of us in the reflection group thought that this is what we would have liked the European Union to be. We realize that this is not a politically realistic solution under the current circumstances. It seems that the forces inside the European Union are heading probably to the reverse direction, rather than towards this big leap forward that a real integration would suggest. So this is not viable for now, given the reluctance of most national political elites and European citizens to pull core elements of national sovereignty at an EU level. The third option is consolidate. Consolidate is, somehow I've made the metaphor of the gearbox, putting the gearbox in neutral while the EU vehicle continues to move. What does it say? We've done enough, we've gone far. We need more structural reforms at the national level. We need governance innovations to work, those that have been made, especially with regard to the governance of the Eurozone over the last 5 years. We have to give them time. And thus, we need to catch our breath, not overstretch, not be overambitious, just stop here and give more time to time. Doing less or doing it better is the mantra today in circles in Brussels, many capitals, and this is a view that is somehow encouraged by the understanding that the most extreme version of the crisis has receded, the crisis in the Eurozone, I mean, and therefore we should just, put our feet on the ground and wait and see what happens and give more time to time. Now, this is a case, in our view, of loss of ambition. It is a case of complacency. It is clearly the result of reform fatigue. The European Union has had many grand projects over the last few years, and it has had to do unconceivable things with regard to the Eurozone architecture over the last few years. And this has caused this reform fatigue. But staying where we are is not the solution, because staying where we are will mean that in a few years we will be faced with another crisis of the Eurozone, such as the one that we faced, which was very significantly the result of deficiencies in the institutions and the architecture of the Eurozone. It will be faced with another crisis of integration, because we haven't been able to pull together as much as is needed in order to prevent such crises from emerging. So for us, this consolidation is not an option. It's perhaps something that comes with a minimal political cost. It is, the minimum cost of inertia, but it is not an option because it does not address the problems and the challenges that we have outlined in the beginning in a viable and sustainable way on the medium and longer run. So we need to go beyond the lowest common denominator, to move to closer cooperation that will be indispensable. We need to create a fresh momentum, not only in order to overcome the current crisis, but also to exploit the potential to create more momentum to meet demands and expectations of our citizens. And that is why we have come out with a proposal for a new pact for Europe. Now, the three pillars upon which this new pact for Europe is based, and I would say we are locating it between the option of consolidation and the option of further leap forward, okay? So it's a sort of a pragmatically ambitious proposal, if I may describe it this way. 3 pillars: enabling union, supportive union, participatory union, and one grand project as part of a package deal to balance the interests of different member states and different groups within member states, and to provide this win-win that I mentioned in the beginning. What is the first pillar of enabling union? This is about addressing the major challenge of fostering sustainable economic growth and job creation, stimulating public and private investment at both European and national level. It is about promoting social investment, enhance EU competitiveness, supporting structural reforms, and especially in the lagging member states, in the lagging economies, but also remaining in the path to fiscal consolidation. And clearly, there are instruments attached to all these policies, and I'm not going to tie you with details. We will return to that theme in another panel. They're all listed in the very extensive proposal, which is the new Pact for Europe. Strengthen and transform the economies, and this is a job primarily of the member states through structural reforms that they have to implement at the national level, but they have to be supported for these reforms by the European Union through European Union instruments, and this will enable Europe to realize its combined growth potential in the interest of all EU member states. Now, these interventions include smart investment that will provide better tools to enhance human capital, an active agenda focused on knowledge and skills, and so forth. And you can see the specific instruments that translate this pillar into specific actions in the project which is on our side. The second important pillar is a supportive union. We need to enhance the European Union's caring dimension. Citizens have to understand that being a citizen of the European Union comes with certain inalienable civil and social rights. And it has to convince them that the European Union is able to address the concerns that some crises and that some countries and some groups after this crisis have been left behind, which is a factor that is fueling a sense of social injustice within and between member states. There it is important. We have lost a lot, especially in the crisis-hit countries over the last few years. We've lost a lot in terms of social entitlements, in terms of what used to be the minimum guarantees of a social pact, of a social economy, social market economy. The European Union has to ensure citizens that it is always able to respect minimum social standards and not lead to a race to the bottom. A social compact, including social convergence criteria, measures to support those suffering most from the crisis, a complementary European unemployment scheme, and we'll be able to talk about that later, an obligatory minimum support scheme, such as a pan-European minimum guaranteed income network funded by national means, but as part of a European policy or European Mobility Fund to address the challenges of immigration. Finally, third pillar, participatory union. We need to have the dimension of participation of citizens, strengthen the ties between the European Union and its citizens by increasing democratic legitimacy. And this is not just about expanding the role of institutions such as the European Parliament or the Commission in other areas. It is also a matter of expanding opportunities for frank discussion with member states, within member states, between citizens from European EU countries. That is, fostering a pan-European public space that would be able to generate the legitimacy and engender the democratic participation that is important to strengthen the participatory pillar of the European project. Strengthen direct involvement of citizens, enhance role of national parliaments, expand schemes that enable people to experience direct benefits of EU membership and foster greater understanding of the Union. For example, expand mobility schemes, Erasmus-type schemes across different professional, occupational categories, give the experience to a ever larger number of citizens and groups to experience the benefits of mobility and the benefits of belonging to a common European polity, and also, for example, expanding the European voluntary service as an area of this experience in Europe. And finally, we also propose, along the lines of looking for a project that has the positive spillover effects, that can generate the positive externalities, if I may, that can operate as a win-win, and demonstrate the added value of the European Union, deliver benefits for groups of member states and stakeholders. We propose energy union, which illustrates the type of grand bargain required. It has the potential of addressing challenges in a number of policy areas: economic, industrial, environmental, as well as foreign and security policy. It can act as a unifying factor, and it can also bring into the game more dynamically the member states that are outside the Eurozone, and thus generate this sense of a common project and a positive sum for the entire European Union. So this is our new Pact for Europe. It is ambitious but pragmatic. Most of these measures can be implemented on the basis of current EU treaties. We realize that revising the treaties is a difficult and arduous process. Some, of course, could require additional intergovernmental treaties and agreements. This pragmatically ambitious approach is necessary for the new Pact for Europe to deliver. But we also need the commitment from policy leaders, political leaders, to restore confidence in the Union. This is the way forward, and that is the result of the collective effort of the last couple of years, a new Pact for Europe, its member states and its citizens. Thank you very much.